Hello, my name is Kelly Pallanti, and I'm here to talk today about understanding how empathy supports a mission-driven culture. We're going to start off by breaking down that title and defining what a mission-driven culture is, then talk about what empathy is, how we can practice it, why it's an important leadership skill, and what we can do to bring empathy into the workplace today. All right, what is a mission-driven culture? That is when everyone in the organization, from the frontline staff to the executives, can communicate effectively to the customers and vendors what the mission is of the organization. And the mission is part of the work that they do every day. What drives them, it's what brings them together, what makes them want to come to work. And in order for them to feel that way and to feel like they want to be a part of the mission of the company, is they must feel valued. So my company's mission is to empower leaders to create a culture that values people. And one of the ways to value people is through relationships. And in order to build those relationships, you must build trust. And in order to do that, you could do that through empathy, which is what we're going to talk about today. So empathy, defined in its most concise manner, is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. It is walking in someone else's shoes, as you might say. This is seeing from another person's perspective and really putting aside your own ego and putting yourself in their seat, seeing things from their eyes, trying to think of things from their view, which is really difficult for us to do. So empathy is a true skill that needs to be worked on and advanced. It is really a true change in mindset. Many of us, I know I did, grew up with this saying, the golden rule. You want to treat people how you want to be treated. I know my mom and dad said that to me as a kid, and the intention is good. It's to think about, okay, how would I feel if I were in this situation, and how would I want someone to treat me? That is the intention. But again, with all those I's in there, it really is an egocentric approach. It's putting yourself first and thinking about you. So the change in mindset would to be think more toward what we call the platinum rule. And this is to treat people how they want to be treated, really approaching everyone as an individual and thinking about how they might want you to respond in the situation, not how you would want to respond. A great example would be if I were in a situation and I were upset, if somebody gave me a hug, that would make me feel better. However, if someone else may not appreciate a hug, they may not like to be touched in that way. And so even though I may be treating somebody how I want to be treated, that's not what they want to be treated. So communicating and understanding people's needs and feelings have a lot to do with changing this mindset toward more empathetic approach. So now that we know what empathy is, we were trying to be in somebody else's shoes. I like this little cartoon. They're connecting together. That was really what it is. It's a connection with someone else, building that interpersonal relationship, advancing the emotional intelligence. So how do we do that? And the first step is listening. Now you think, okay, I listen all the time. We have conversations. There's someone who is talking, and then there's somebody who is listening. And what happens, though, in conversation oftentimes is the listener is waiting for their turn to talk. They're taking in some of the information partially, but then the other part of their brain is thinking about either how can I have a solution for what is being said, how can I compare maybe something that I've experienced to what's being said. And so you're really thinking about yourself. Again, we're kind of that more egotistical approach. So to practice empathy, what you want to practice is more active listening. And this starts with just simple things like eye contact, your facial expression. Oftentimes, we may be thinking something and they'll come through on the facial expression. So make sure that you check that. And really one of the main things in active listening is acknowledgement. And part of that has to do with repeating back what somebody's saying to you. So if you're part of a conversation and somebody is revealing something to you and expressing their feelings, instead of during that paused moment where we often feel like we need to fill in with words, that's a good time to kind of reflect on what they said, summarize what they've told to you, and repeat it back to them. This puts the person at ease immediately because it actually develops trust. It says, I understand that you're listening to me, so much so that you can almost repeat back to me exactly what I said. So it automatically starts to build that trust down. Along with the eye contact is the body language and mirroring body language. I taught this a lot in when I taught interviewing. You wanted to mirror the body language of the interviewer to put them at ease. And this is really applies the same way in any type of empathetic conversation. So when we're mirroring body language, we're actually mocking what the other person is doing. So if someone is sitting at the edge of their seat with their hands folded and kind of sitting straight up, then you would want to do the same. The thing with practicing empathy and active listening is that you're going to continue to watch and pay attention to that body language as you continue the conversation. Because as a person starts to open up and feel more comfortable with you, that body language may change. They may lean back in their chair, they may put their arms to the side, and you would want to do that as well. It's creating a comfort level between you two. Next is validation. In empathetic conversations, when people are revealing things about themselves and situations, oftentimes they may feel a little bit of embarrassment in that. They may feel like they're the only ones that this has ever happened to. And so just validating that, we're all individuals, all of our experiences are different. So we interpret other experiences differently. And so if something makes you feel upset or angry, there's actually a validation that it's coming from your perspective. So just telling somebody it's okay to have those feelings. Now let's work on, talk about how we can solve those. What are the solutions moving forward? So how can you start practicing empathy today? You see my slide here. It says don't talk to strangers, and it's all scratched out. And so this really comes from, our childhood again. When we were growing up, we were told not to talk to strangers. That can be a dangerous thing. But this could be a really good tool, talking to strangers, when you're practicing empathy. And kind of try to go beyond the weather conversation and take it, to the next level. Think about those things that we talked about of active listening. Look the person in the eye. Acknowledge what they're saying. Repeat back to them what they're saying. Mirror the body language. That's a great practice to do with a stranger. Really kind of see how that puts somebody at ease as you're doing, what you're doing, and how that changes throughout the conversation. And then if you get to the point of validation, to be able to really validate what someone's feeling without having to come up with a comparison or a solution of your own for them. So talking to strangers is a great way to start practicing empathy day to day. Another way is to look at or think about conversations that lack empathy. And these are conversations that usually we have all the time. They're not necessarily conversations that are, centered at work. These are more simplistic things I'm going to start with. And if you can master these and think about them in a different way, from a more empathetic point of view, then you will be able to handle more conflict resolution and really lead with more empathy inside organizations. So a first example of this would be if somebody said to you, I had an awful day. I got caught in traffic for 2 hours. It was 90 degrees and my air conditioning stopped working. So this is someone they're revealing what's going on with them in the day. And typically in a conversation like this, somebody may respond with, that reminds me of a time. And so instead of acknowledging that this person had an awful day, that would be an acknowledgement. Really what you're doing is you're kind of comparing it to yourself. So by comparing it to your situation, you're really taking away from what they're feeling and taking away from their story and what's going on with them. And so an empathetic way would really kind of be an acknowledgement there. If somebody said something simple to you like, look at this scar I got from an accident. A scar, as we know, can be a really big deal, even though this seems like a very simple sentence. A scar involves pain and usually involves a long healing time. So if you're telling this to somebody and they respond with, oh, that's nothing, you should see the one I have on my knee. What are they doing again? They're not really kind of thinking about your situation and how you may want to be responded to. They're comparing it to themselves. Okay, they're thinking kind of in that egocentrical, centered first person. So really, in this situation, you would even maybe have to respond. This could be even a pause and let them continue to talk. Every pause in a conversation does not require a response. If somebody said to you, I'm worried about having enough money to pay my car payment this month, this one can be something that somebody might want to solve. And an easy way to solve that would be, I'll loan you the money. Even though that may not be, the exact answer for the situation. So what you're trying to do is you're not really listening to what's going on with them, and not even validating that they're worried or want to expand on what the situation is. You're just trying to solve it immediately. And again, leading with empathy is really allowing to think from that person's perspective and how they want you to approach the situation. Empathy is a leadership skill. So we talked about in the beginning about how it, supports a mission-driven culture, and that comes from our leaders. Our leaders, the ones who create safe and secure teams inside our organizations. I mentioned that this is a part of emotional intelligence, and it is something that has to be learned. I just gave examples of things, everyday conversations that we have. We've probably all responded in similar ways there. So how can we really think about empathy in a different way? And once we do, how that will positively affect the culture and the revenue inside your organization. And this is supported by something called the Global Empathy Index. And what they say is that empathy correlates to growth, productivity, and earnings per employee. So it's a true connection of, how teams feel valued and supported, beginning with empathy and building these relationships, and how they perform at work. It says in our work with our clients, they found that the correlation was as high as 80% between departments with higher empathy and those with high performers. And again, this is going back to the value. High-rated GEI companies retain the best people, they create the best environments, and they have the most diverse teams, which ultimately result in a higher bottom line, those financial rewards. So these, of course, are things that we're trying to work on in a lot of our organizations. Diverse teams, how do we create and retain employees in the current workforce? How do we get more one-on-one action with people in order to create these valuable relationships and have the opportunity to express empathy? So I want to talk about what you can do in your organization to support empathy today. We talked about practicing outside, what you can do to build your own empathy, but how can you bring that into your organization? And there are some simple ways we can do that called empathy nudges. They're just little things that don't take a lot of strategic time and money. They're just things that you can start doing inside your organization to show how much you value your team. Number one is create a coaching culture. That one is probably the most important, which is why it's at the top of the list. This is a true transformation in our workforce right now. As an HR professional, I'm always talking about the change in performance reviews. We have long moved away from an annual review and really continued what we call these coaching sessions and more one-on-one interpersonal contact with management and staff. And what that means is, as a leader, when you're having these conversations, you're all mainly leading with empathy in those, and you're really not there to always have the answers and solutions. That's the thing about a coaching culture. It's not someone who's there to give the answers. It's how do we work together to find solutions, and often allowing the person to work through themselves. So that goes back to that, empathy approach of listening, pausing during conversations, organizations, allowing the person to think about their own solutions and not always providing those. So creating a coaching culture really has to do just with making more contacts and making more meaningful meetings and relationships. Brainstorm ideas. I love this at all levels of the organization. It can be within departments. It could be organization wide. It's great when it can involve, everyone from the frontline staff to the executives. What brainstorming ideas does, again, it shows value. You're allowing people to express what they think is important. And when they're allowed to express those ideas, that again drives them toward the mission of your organization, right? They're actually thinking about how they can make your company a better company. Now, I've heard some pushback from a manager sometimes with this because they think, well, if they provide all these great ideas, what happens if we don't implement them? And that's okay. And that should be talked about when you're talking about brainstorming ideas, is that's exactly what it is. Even though your particular idea may not be implemented, it may lead to another idea. And that's a part of, the team culture. The important thing is how do you address people and acknowledge them during those brainstorming sessions? This is a great opportunity to really practice empathy, right? You can make the eye contact, you can mirror the body language, you can repeat back to them. So you're validating or you're acknowledging what they're saying, validating their feelings and ideas. So brainstorming sessions are a great opportunity to do that. Mentor programs. These are wonderful right now. This is really kind of goes beyond the coaching culture and allows you to be paired up with someone in the organization that you can truly rely on. And this goes, you can show empathy, really with both sides of this. This is a great opportunity to create trustful relationships and I can't say enough about career development. They are a big total rewards tool right now when people are looking at different organizations that they want to work for. Mentor programs are very attractive. It shows that you value your people, you want them to succeed inside your organization. Volunteering. For nonprofits, this really becomes a natural thing. Most people who work for nonprofits end up volunteering for events or something else that's going on with the organization because they support the mission, right? They support the company. Volunteering is now a big part in the for-profit culture as well. This is a wonderful opportunity to bring your teams together, to create trust outside the walls of the organization, and to really show empathy to those in the community, right? To people who are outside of your sphere of influence. And so volunteering is a great way to show your employees how you value things that are going on in your community as well. And that means that in turn, you'll be valuing them. Role model behavior. This can't be said more than enough. We all know with everything inside companies, things come from the top. It's really important for the executives and above to have this behavior, but this behavior can come from anybody inside the organization, right? I have seen a CEO been influenced by how a frontline staff person handled a difficult conversation. So role modeling behavior can have influence over anyone at any time. So as you're maybe out practicing your stranger practice, right? Your empathy stranger practice session, somebody could be watching you and can be seeing how you're treating another person and repeat that behavior. So role modeling that behavior is very important in any setting at any level of the company or outside. Acknowledging random acts of kindness. I love this one. Inside companies, a lot of times they do shout outs, or they'll put those in newsletters and emails, or you may get a badge or something from an employee that recommended that you did something well on a project or achieved something inside the organization. And those are usually workplace focused. Random acts of kindness are kind of outside that sphere, things that make us human. If you saw an employee that was helping, somebody elderly in the building in the morning, they were holding the door for them, acknowledge that and not acknowledge that to them, acknowledge that in a meeting. That may not be an email blast worthy, but those small things, again, is showing people that you value them also at an interpersonal level. And that starts to create trust for them. It's saying, I see you as a person. So you're outside of just what we're doing here in the workplace. So acknowledging random acts of kindness can go a long way. And this, I saved the best for last, my absolute favorite. Follow someone else's schedule for a day. So we talked about in the beginning, what is empathy? And it really is walking in someone else's shoes, right? And no better way to do that than being in someone else's schedule. This particularly, goes for leaders. If you're having difficulty with solving an issue for a staff member of yours, how you can't get to an operational, point, how do you solve that? Step in their schedule for a day, 3 days. A week would be great. And really be at their level and see what it's like to be in their job every day. It is an eye-opening experience. It's one of those things that I feel I wish every leader can experience every position inside the organization. It's a great, great learning tool, and it gives you such a different perspective. It allows you to see it from their point of view. And it tells the person that whose role you're stepping into, that you value them enough to take the time to do so. So it is something, valuing people does take time, but it will pay off in the end, not only for building a mission-driven culture, but also positively affecting your revenue as well.